The X-Men have had a very long, confusing, sometimes great, and sometimes not so great history. From their quiet and humble beginnings to the constant modern-day changes, the mutant nation is a key component to the Marvel landscape, even if they did try to replace them with the Inhumans that one time, but we'll forget that ever happened. The X-Men were brought into life in 1963 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. With a rich history comes plenty of stories. A lot of stories have had a lasting, often positive impact on X-Men's readers. But not every story has been great, and some, well, if I were Marvel, I'd probably want to forget about them entirely as well. So, time to bust those neuralizers out. I'm you and this is What Culture Comics, and here are 8 things Marvel wants you to forget about the X-Men. Number 8. Zorn and Magneto. Who is it really? Coming off the heels of the X-Men film franchise taking off, Grant Morrison was brought in as a writer for the new X-Men series in 2001. Morrison was looking to use the films to influence the series and shake up the status quo for Marvel's next step in human evolution. One example of this was the X-Men costumes were replaced with snazzy new outfits courtesy of Frank Quitely. However, like the costumes, not all of Morrison's storylines would stick. During the Planet X story arc, the newly introduced character, Zorn, removed his helmet to show he was actually Magneto in one of the all-time great comic book plot twists. Magneto wanted to finally turn the Earth into a mutant paradise by killing almost everyone on the planet. During Magneto's rampage, he was involved in the deaths of Jean, Esme, and thousands of New Yorkers. Eventually, he was decapitated by a berserk Wolverine. And hey, it was a really great arc, but Marvel weren't content to let it be. They created a convoluted story that it was really a new and different Zorn's brother that was possessed by an unknown being. Apparently, Zorn's brother has the same powers as Magneto? Magneto was on Genosha after the destruction of the mutant island during the beginning of Morrison's run, so it made for a pretty confusing retcon, all in all. Number 7. Professor Xavier loves Jean Grey. Charles Xavier is a wise, old, psychic, and bold mentor to the X-Men. Even though he hasn't always led the group, he is still seen as a father figure to a lot of the heroic mutants whenever he's alive, which makes this next bit just ever so slightly creepy. In 1964, a panel showed Xavier's inner monologue where his thoughts confessed his love for the young Jean Grey. Gross. No other writer touched this moment with a 10-foot barge pole because A, blur, and B, ugh, until the Onslaught saga. The most 90s of all 90s comics were Xavier and Magneto fused into one overpowered entity that threatened to lay waste to the entire Marvel universe. During said Onslaught saga, Onslaught met Jean Grey on the astral plane as he was looking for new sources of power. He had hoped the Avatar of the Phoenix Force would join him on his crusade, and decided to confess Xavier's feelings to her then and there. Understandably yucked out about the revelation, Jean instigated a battle with Onslaught. Onslaught ended up defeating Jean and forced her astral form back into her body. He also wiped the experience of what happened from Jean's mind. If only we were given the same treatment. Number 6. Feral Wolverine. In 1993, Fatal Attractions was the big X-Men event. The story resulted in Magneto causing Wolverine's skeleton to be stripped of its adamantium. With the huge trauma and his healing factor working overtime, Wolverine was near death's door. Eventually, he did recover. Fans also found out Wolverine had always had claws, and it wasn't an effect of the adamantium, but they also found out something that wasn't nearly as fun. The adamantium in Wolverine's system was actually poisoning him, which caused his healing factor to constantly battle the metal. Once the adamantium was removed, Wolverine's quote-unquote natural mutation could take place. This meant that Wolverine became more animalistic. So he started yelling instead of talking, acted like an animal, and was way more prone to berserker rages. Eventually, the feral Wolverine concept was dropped altogether as Logan arrived back at the mansion as his old self. No explanation was provided, with both Marvel and fans content to pretend the whole affair never happened. Number 5. Chuck Austen's X-Men. Look, right, where do we even begin with this? Austen introduced Nightcrawler's father Azazel, another devil-like character in Marvel. Azazel was looking to escape his dimension to get to Earth 616. He decided he needed teleporting offspring that would be able to combine their powers to create a portal. Azazel achieved this by just coming to Earth to impregnate women. Apparently, Azazel can get to Earth just fine, making the whole scheme somewhat redundant and really confusing. Another negative element included the Purifiers attempting to trick people into believing the Rapture is taking place. They also wanted to make Nightcrawler the Pope, no seriously, this is a real story arc, but have his image inducer fail, thus showing Nightcrawler's demon-like form to the Catholic faithful. And of course, there was the coup de grace, the pièce de résistance of the whole thing, with Angel and Husk deciding to have sex in the air while Husk's family are below, watching on. Now right, the X-Men is a naturally horny comic, but this was just not the right kind of horny energy anyone wants in their X-books. In fact, it's just really uncomfortable. Stop it, Chuck. Stop it. Number 4. X-Men wasn't originally a hit. In 1991, X-Men #1 became the biggest selling comic of all time. Written by Chris Claremont and with art by Jim Lee, this issue sold 8.1 million times with a combination of variant covered issues. But in 1970, the original run of the series was actually cancelled by Marvel. After Stan Lee and Jack Kirby left their work on X-Men as sales began to fall, Roy Thomas and Neil Adams took over. After they reached issue number 66, and 1 year on from when they joined, the series was cancelled altogether. From issue 67 to 93, no more new stories were coming out from the land of mutants. Instead, older issues were reprinted. As the X-Men floundered in limbo, out from the shadows stepped Len Wein and Dave Cockrum. In 1975, they rejuvenated the mutant brand with giant-sized X-Men #1. They replaced most of the original team and introduced exciting and experienced mutants from around the globe, including Nightcrawler and Storm. It's also where Wolverine joined the team. Shortly after, newcomer Chris Claremont came into the series as a writer. Claremont used soap opera elements in the stories, and well, the rest was history. The X-Men simultaneously became Marvel's most lauded and most popular series for decades to come. Number 3. The Flip-Flopped Origins. Retcons happen all the time in comics. It's an aspect we, the readers, all have to accept. Sometimes they can be great and bring in new dynamics, while other times they can just stink a whole lot and are really bad. To start off with, Cannonball's mutant origin was changed. Cable informed the New Mutant / X-Force mutant and future member of the Avengers that he was an external. In short, an external is a mutant with the added benefit of immortality. Until this new element was just dropped, as it turns out it was a huge mistake from Cable. Cannonball was still just a regular mutant. In other retcon news, Northstar and his sister Aurora found out their mother was an elf, which resulted in Northstar going off to live with his newly discovered family, only to find out it was all a lie from Loki. Again, they're still just mutants too. Finally, in perhaps the most embarrassing X-Men retcon ever, in 2007, Romulus told Wolverine that he was a lupine and not a mutant. Now, what's a lupine? Well, a lupine is a species of human that evolved from canines and not simians. Understandably, this change did not go down too well with fans, and for 5 years, this was considered canon, until Romulus' sister, Remus, told Wolverine that Romulus was lying and lupines aren't actually a thing. Wolverine went back to being a near-immortal mutant, and we all breathed a deep sigh of relief. Number 2. The Ultimate Universe. The Ultimate Universe was an amazing thing back when it started out, at least if you were Spider-Man or the Avengers. Under the guidance of Brian Bendis, Mark Bagley, Mark Miller, and Brian Hitch, Marvel pioneered a modern aesthetic for their heroes and birthed one of the most influential comics of the modern era. The X-Men weren't such beneficiaries, though. I always felt their Ultimate series was something of a low point for the actual imprint, and when Jeff Loeb got his hands on the Ultimate Universe in the mid-noughties and started having all sorts of gruesome stuff happen, including Cyclops melting Magneto's face off after he drowned millions of people, they were pretty much beyond saving. The Ultimate Universe came to a close with 2015's Secret Wars, and while there has been talk it may yet return, I'm not sure many are clamoring to see the X-Men's Ultimate equivalents anytime soon. And number 1. The Inhumans are the New Mutants. The Inhumans are a subset of humanity that have had their genes experimented on by an alien race. They're able to get their powers with the aid of a Terrigen mist. Sounds like mutants, right? No? Well, that's what Marvel wanted you to think anyway. And it was all thanks to the rights dispute involving the company and Fox, who at the time retained the rights to the X-Men and Fantastic Four on the big screen. Marvel, specifically Ike Perlmutter, insert Sideshow Bob steps on rake noise here, weren't fans. So they decided to cancel the Fantastic Four's comics, devalue the X-Men, and boost the profile of the Inhumans. Suddenly, Avengers members Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were no longer mutants, Inhuman numbers increased globally after the Infinity events, and the Mist themselves actually started to kill mutants too. Marvel soon realized that the X-Men were too big to replace, however, and since Disney's acquisition of Fox, both the team and the Fantastic Four are back where they belong, at the forefront of Marvel's comics. Still, wild to think that they ever considered replacing both of them though. That's just wild. And that was our list on 8 things Marvel wants you to forget about the X-Men. Know of any other embarrassing tidbits from the series past? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Remember, you can find more content like this at whatculture.com/comics, and more of me on Twitter at @HuanRuinsThings. That's all for now though, and I'll see you next time.